At a family reunion, my aunt told me, "Don't go into the basement." So that night I did. I found dozens of old photos, all with my face scribbled out. Then I saw a diary. The last entry read, "If she comes back, we'll finish what we started." I ran upstairs. My uncle was waiting. I swear I can still smell the basement, dust, old carpet, and something sour that clung to the back of my throat. But that night at my family reunion in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, all I knew was that my Aunt Linda pulled me aside right after dinner, grabbed my wrist a little too hard, and whispered, "Don't go into the basement, Emily." "I mean it." She didn't smile. She didn't blink. Just said it like a threat she was trying to pass off as advice. Everyone else was laughing in the living room, drinking cheap beer, arguing about the Eagles game. I hadn't seen these people in over 15 years. I'd spent most of my adult life avoiding this house, this family, this town. But for reasons I still don't fully get, maybe guilt, maybe stubbornness, I'd come back. At first, I brushed her warning off. Weird aunt behavior wasn't exactly rare in my family, but the way her voice cracked, that stuck with me. It felt like she was scared of something, or scared for me. By midnight, the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional floorboard pop. Everyone had gone to bed or passed out on couches. I was lying in the guest room staring at the ceiling, replaying her voice in my head like a broken recording. "Don't go into the basement," which obviously meant I had to. I told myself I just wanted to grab an old board game or find some childhood junk to rummage through. But deep down, I knew there was a reason I'd avoided this house for so long. Something about my childhood here always felt off, like I'd forgotten something important, something big. And that warning snapped something awake inside me. So I crept down the hallway, past the room where my Uncle Gary snored like a dying lawn mower, and made my way to the basement door. It was still the same faded white with that ugly bronze knob. I half expected it to be locked, but it wasn't. It opened way too easily. The basement light flickered when I pulled the chain, casting this depressing yellow glow over the room. Everything looked the same as when I was a kid: sagging shelves, dusty boxes, a half-broken ping-pong table shoved into the corner. Then I saw the photos. A whole stack of them on top of an old trunk. Hundreds, maybe more. All black and white or faded Polaroids, all of family gatherings, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. And in every single one, my face was scribbled out with a thick black marker. Not torn out, not cut out. Just violently, obsessively scratched over. My hands went cold. I kept flipping through them even though my stomach was twisting up. Why would anyone do this? Who even kept these? Why not just throw them away? That's when I noticed the small red diary tucked beside the trunk. The cover was cracked like someone opened it too many times. I shouldn't have touched it. Every instinct told me to leave it alone. But I opened it anyway. Most pages were blank, except the last one. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. "If she comes back, we'll finish what we started." I felt the air go thin. I didn't even understand what it meant, but it felt wrong, like the words themselves were watching me. I snapped the diary shut and bolted for the stairs. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I reached the top step. When I pushed open the basement door, I froze. My Uncle Gary was standing there in the dark hallway, wide awake, blocking the exit, and smiling like he'd been waiting for me the whole time. I grew up in that house on Ridgeview Drive, the one with the peeling blue shutters and the rusted swing set that always looked one good storm away from collapsing. My parents died when I was 6, car accident on Route 30, so I ended up living with Aunt Linda and Uncle Gary. Back then, people told me I was lucky to have family who stepped up. But I never felt lucky. I felt like a guest who overstayed her welcome on the very first day. I don't remember everything from those early years, but I remember enough. I remember how Aunt Linda watched me constantly, like she expected me to break something. I remember how Uncle Gary's smiles never reached his eyes. And I remember that front door chain lock I could never reach, the one that somehow always clicked into place whenever I tried to sneak outside to play with the neighborhood kids. But the basement, that's the part that's always been fuzzy. I know kids block out trauma, but this felt like something else. Whenever I tried to remember being down there, it was like my brain hit a 404 error. Blank. Just flashes, cold concrete, the metal legs of a table, the echo of muffled voices. Nothing clear. Nothing I could string together. After I turned 11, something changed. Aunt Linda sent me to live with my mom's cousin in Ohio for school stability. That's the official story. The unofficial one, I woke up one morning with a bruise across my ribs shaped like someone's hand, and 2 days later I was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. No closure. My therapist in Cincinnati told me it was probably an accident, that the mind invents narratives in the absence of facts. But even then, something in me knew the truth didn't just disappear. It was taken. I never visited Lancaster again. Not once. I didn't speak to Linda or Gary outside of a couple awkward holiday calls. Anytime I tried to think about that house, I felt this pressure behind my eyes, like a migraine was waiting to happen. So I stopped trying. Then 3 months ago, I got the invitation to the first family reunion in 20 years. My name was on the envelope in Aunt Linda's handwriting, loopy, uneven, a little shaky. I almost threw it away. But something about it tugged at me. I told myself I should try to reconnect, that maybe enough time had passed, that I was a grown woman now. Nothing from the past could touch me. God, I was so wrong. From the minute I stepped back into that house 2 nights ago, I felt the old dread creeping under my skin. The layout was the same. The wallpaper was the same. Even the smell was the same, stale, humid, like a house that never learned how to breathe. Everyone acted normal at first. Too normal. Hugs that felt rehearsed. Compliments delivered with frozen smiles. Cousins pretending like we'd grown up together. But underneath it all was something I couldn't name. Attention. A secret absorbed into the walls. And then, right before dessert, Aunt Linda grabbed my wrist with that warning. Don't go into the basement. Not it's messy. Not it's unsafe. Not you don't need to be in there. Just don't go. Like she thought I would. Like she feared I would. Like she knew something terrible would happen if I did. And when I found those photos, the ones with my face scratched out, every missing memory from childhood suddenly felt intentional, like someone had erased pieces of me and left everything else intact. But none of that compared to the sight waiting for me upstairs. My uncle, awake, silent, smiling, like he'd been standing in that hallway, listening for my footsteps, waiting for the exact moment I opened that basement door. I froze at the top of the stairs, one hand still gripping the banister like it was the only solid thing in the world. Uncle Gary didn't move. He just stood there in the dark hallway, blocking my way to the guest room, smiling like he knew a joke I didn't. "Late night exploring?" he asked softly. His voice was wrong, too calm, too controlled. I'd heard him yell, grunt, snore, bark orders, complain about the news, but I had never heard him sound like this. Measured, intentional. I swallowed and forced my voice to sound steady. Couldn't sleep. His eyes flicked to the basement door behind me, then back to my face. "You always were curious." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Like he wasn't talking about now. Like he was talking about a different time, one I still couldn't remember. I stepped sideways, trying to slide past him, but he lifted one arm and set his hand on the wall, casually closing off the space. "You shouldn't be sneaking around," he said. "It's rude. It's a house, Gary, not a crime scene." He didn't like that. His smile dropped an inch, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. Cold, assessing, like he was deciding something. Before he could say anything else, Aunt Linda's voice drifted from the living room. "Gary, you still awake?" He didn't answer right away. He kept staring at me, like he was weighing whether to pretend nothing had happened or to drag me back down the stairs. Finally, he stepped back. "Go to bed, Em," he said. "It's late." I didn't wait. I walked down the hall as fast as I could without looking like I was running. I shut the guest room door, locked it, pushed a chair under the knob, and sat on the edge of the bed shaking. I kept replaying everything. The photos, the diary entry, the handwriting that looked rushed and terrified. And the way he was just standing there in the dark like he knew exactly where I'd gone and what I'd found. I sat awake until around 4 a.m., listening. I couldn't hear footsteps, just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old wood. But every time the house shifted, my heart jumped. By morning, I had convinced myself I was overreacting, that maybe the scribbled photos were some twisted attempt at art or a kid's prank. That the diary was old, not meant for me. That Gary being awake in the hallway was weird but not dangerous. I wanted to believe I was being dramatic. Trauma brain, paranoia, something normal. Except breakfast made everything worse. The entire family was gathered around the long oak table like a staged scene. Cousins, in-laws, a couple people I barely recognized. Everyone looked up when I walked in. Every conversation stopped instantly, like someone had pressed mute. Aunt Linda gave me a smile that didn't match the panic I'd seen in her eyes the night before. "Sleep okay?" I nodded, though she and I both knew that was a lie. She reached for my plate. She always insisted on serving. But when her sleeve slipped, I saw a faint bruise on her forearm. Oval, finger-shaped. She jerked her arm back when she realized I'd noticed. The rest of breakfast was silent, tense, heavy. People kept glancing at me like they wanted to say something but were terrified too. Afterward, while I was helping clear plates, my cousin Michelle brushed past me and whispered under her breath, "You shouldn't have gone down there." I froze. "What?" She didn't turn around. "Just, don't be alone today." Then she walked off. I stood there holding a stack of dishes, my pulse pounding, the house suddenly feeling smaller than ever. Everyone knew something. Everyone was acting strange. Everyone was watching me. Whatever happened to me in that house when I was a kid, whatever I forgot, none of it was an accident. And now that I'd gone into the basement, I wasn't sure they were going to let me leave at all. By early afternoon, the house felt like it was holding its breath. People kept drifting in and out of rooms, pretending to tidy or prep lunch, but really they were circling me. Watching, listening. Every time I turned around, someone looked away too fast. I told myself I needed air, so I slipped out the back door and stood on the porch, hugging my arms against the chill. It was cloudy, the kind of day where the sky feels too low. The yard looked smaller than I remembered, just a patch of uneven grass, the rusted swing set, and the woods beyond. I was debating whether to just walk into those woods and call an Uber when the screen door creaked open behind me. It was Aunt Linda. She stepped out, wrapped in a cardigan, eyes darting toward the house like she was afraid someone would follow. She didn't look like the strict, rigid woman I'd grown up with. She looked broken, tired, older than the year suggested. "Emily," she said quietly, "we need to talk." My stomach tightened. "About the basement," she winced, which was all the answer I needed. I waited for her to speak, but she didn't. She just kept twisting her hands together, fingers trembling. It hit me then, she wasn't warning me because she was afraid of something. She was afraid for me. "Linda," I said, "I need to know what happened here. Why were all my pictures scratched out? Why is there a diary saying—" She flinched again, harder this time. "I never wanted you to see that. I tried to get rid of it." "Then tell me." She looked at the ground. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." My heart stopped. "Go what far?" She lifted her head, and her voice came out like a confession she'd been choking on for years. "Your uncle, he wasn't supposed to hurt you." The ground under me seemed to tilt. "What do you mean, hurt me?" I said. "What did he—" The porch door banged open. We both jumped. Cousin Michelle stepped out, face pale. "Aunt Linda," she hissed, "they're looking for you." Linda's body tensed. "Tell them I'm—" "No," Michelle said, grabbing her arm. "They told me to get you. Now." The way she said, they made my skin crawl. Before Linda could respond, Gary's voice boomed from inside the house. "Linda!" She went white. Michelle let go immediately. I stepped in front of my aunt without even thinking. "She's talking to me." Gary strode onto the porch like he owned the ground he walked on. His eyes skimmed over Linda, then locked onto me. And in that moment, something clicked in his expression, a shift I didn't recognize at first, but then it hit me. He wasn't angry that Linda was talking. He was angry she hadn't done it sooner. "Inside," he said to her. When she didn't move, he grabbed her elbow hard enough to make her gasp. "Let her go," I snapped. He ignored me. Dragged her toward the doorway. "Gary," I yelled, grabbing her other arm. He turned to me slowly, and that smile from the hallway came back, the one that didn't reach his eyes. "You don't remember, do you?" he murmured. Cold ripped through me. "Remember what?" He leaned in close enough that I could smell his breath. "The reason you were sent away." Aunt Linda shook her head, tears streaming. "Gary, stop, please. Tell her," he said, his grip tightening. "Tell her who made us send her off." She choked. "Emily, it was you." I stared at her. "What?" "You weren't safe to keep here," she whispered. "We didn't know what else to do." My chest constricted. "Safe from what?" She squeezed her eyes shut. "From yourself." The world stopped. My aunt, the one person I thought might be on my side protecting me. She was protecting them, from me. The entire foundation of my past cracked open in an instant. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, shaking. "I was a child, a child. What did you say I did?" Linda didn't answer, but Gary did. He leaned in, lips curling into that horrible smile. "You tried to kill your cousin," he said, and I felt the ground fall out from under me. I couldn't breathe. The words kept echoing in my head like someone had dropped them into a deep well. "You tried to kill your cousin. My cousin, at age 6. It sounded impossible, ridiculous, like something ripped from a bad TV movie. But the way they were both looking at me, as if they expected me to suddenly snap, made my whole body go numb. Gary shoved Linda through the porch door and she didn't fight. She looked like a woman who'd already surrendered years ago. Before he stepped inside, Gary turned back toward me. "We'll talk later," he said. "Stay where I can see you." Then he shut the door. Michelle stared after them, jaw tight. She looked torn between running after me or running away from all of this. I didn't wait for her to decide. I backed off the porch, down the steps, across the yard until my shoes hit the grass. I didn't stop until I reached the rusted swing set. My hands were shaking so hard I had to rub them on my jeans. I kept trying to replay every childhood memory I had, sleepovers, school days, playing in the yard, but none of it matched what they were saying. I'd never hurt a soul. I'd never even gotten into a real fight at school. So why the hell were they telling people I was violent? Why erase my face from photos? Why hide a diary saying they'd finish what they started? None of it added up. And then a terrifying realization hit me. They were building a story. A narrative, one where I was unstable, dangerous, unpredictable. Because if something happened to me now, if I fell down the stairs, or had an episode, or attacked someone, the family already had a convenient explanation ready. They were isolating me, closing in, and no one outside this reunion even knew I was here. I needed to get out. Now, I pulled out my phone, no bars, not even one. The house sat in a cell-dead zone, but as a kid I didn't have a phone, so I'd never known. I jogged across the yard toward the tree line, hoping the signal would return as soon as I stepped off the property. But before I got 5 steps into the trees, I heard rustling. Not small rustling, heavy rustling. I froze. From deeper in the woods, someone was watching. I didn't see a face, just the shape of a figure standing between 2 trees. Wide shoulders, still, waiting. I backed up slowly. My throat felt tight. Maybe it wasn't Gary, or maybe it was. Either way, they weren't going to let me leave through the woods. My only shot was inside the house, where the landline was, or maybe someone's car keys, or even just a damn house phone charger so I could walk far enough to get a signal. But if I walked in through the front or back door, someone would see me immediately. And based on the way the family had stopped talking at breakfast, I had no idea how many of them were involved in whatever this was. So I took a long breath, forced my heartbeat to slow, and walked the perimeter of the yard back toward the house. I crouched behind the rhododendron bushes near the side door, the one that led into the laundry room. As a kid, that door was never locked. Nobody cared about laundry theft. I peeked through the window, empty. I slipped inside silently, closing the door without letting it latch all the way. The house was quiet, suspiciously quiet. Voices murmured faintly from the living room, but I couldn't make out words. I moved down the hallway toward the kitchen, stepping carefully around the creaky boards I still remembered. My goal was the counter where Aunt Linda kept the house phone, but when I reached the doorway I stopped cold. The phone was gone, completely, just an empty spot and dust in the shape of where it used to be. They'd removed it. They were preparing for something. My pulse hammered. I backed away slowly, forcing myself not to panic. I needed information. Proof. Something to tell me what they thought I did and what they were planning to do to me. So for the first time since childhood, I made a choice I never thought I'd make again. I headed back to the basement. Not to snoop. To find something I knew had to be down there, something that could give me the truth they'd been hiding for 20 years. And as I pulled the basement door open, one thought cut through the fear. If they wanted to finish what they started, I needed to know exactly what that was. I pulled the basement door open just an inch, listening for footsteps upstairs. Nothing. Just the soft murmur of voices and the occasional clink of dishes. Everyone pretending life was normal while something rotten sat right beneath their feet. I slipped down the stairs, keeping my hand on the railing to steady myself. The basement light flickered on, washing the room in the same sick yellow glow I'd stood in the night before. But the moment I reached the bottom step, my stomach dropped. The trunk with the photos, gone. The diary, gone. The table the trunk had been sitting on, pushed against the wall like the room had been rearranged in a hurry. Someone had been down here. Someone had cleaned up. Someone knew I'd found everything. I stood in the middle of the concrete floor, breathing hard. I didn't know whether to scream or run or punch the wall. Instead, I forced myself to think. There had to be something else left behind, something they forgot or couldn't get to without making noise. I scanned the room slowly. The shelves, the old freezer, the storage closet, the closet, I hadn't checked that last night. It was small and narrow, with a wooden door that never shut properly. It used to creep open at night by itself, terrifying me as a kid. I always thought it was a draft. Now I wasn't so sure. I approached it, my pulse hammering. The door stuck when I pulled it, warped wood, but then popped open with a loud snap. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, all unlabeled except one near the bottom, the only one with writing. On the top, in faded marker, M. Incident. My hands went cold. I pulled the box out, set it on the floor, and lifted the lid. Inside were documents, photos, clippings, a whole file of paperwork like something you'd keep for a court case or medical evaluation. The first paper was a child services report from 2003. My name was at the top. But the part that made my knees buckle was the section labeled Primary Concern. It didn't say violent behavior. It didn't say harmful tendencies. It didn't say anything they'd told me upstairs. Instead, it read, Possible witness to domestic abuse. Child reports memory gaps. Family displays inconsistent testimony. I flipped to the next page, a police note, handwritten. Child states she was locked in basement during incident. Claims uncle was angry about something she overheard. My blood went cold. Another report, this one from the hospital. Bruising on ribs and forearm. Child states I fell. Caregiver appears agitated. Then photos, me at age 6. Bruises on my ribs, bruises on my arms, eyes swollen from crying. I felt like I was going to vomit. They hadn't sent me away because I was dangerous. They'd sent me away because they were afraid I'd talk, afraid I'd remember, afraid I'd tell someone what I saw. But then I found something even worse. At the bottom of the box was a manila envelope addressed to my aunt and uncle. No date. No return address. Inside were photos, but not of me, of Gary, and a woman I didn't recognize, her face bruised, her lips split, her hair yanked. The timestamp in the corner was from the same week as the incident. And suddenly, it all clicked. I hadn't hurt my cousin. I'd witnessed something Gary had done, something violent, something my aunt had helped cover up. And the incident wasn't me harming someone, it was Gary harming me. My breath caught. I wasn't the threat. I was the liability. But the bigger twist hit me a second later, so sharp it felt like someone punched me in the chest. Because tucked behind the photos was a letter. A short one. In shaky handwriting, I recognized instantly. I'm sorry, Emily. I tried to tell them the truth. They wouldn't let me. Mom, my mother, alive long enough to write that, or written before she died. My vision blurred. My hands shook. Everything I'd believed about my childhood, everything this family had told me was a lie. And now I wasn't just someone they feared. I was someone who could expose everything. Footsteps creaked overhead. Slow, heavy. Coming toward the basement door. The footsteps above me were slow and deliberate, like someone wanted me to hear every creak of every step. I backed into the narrow storage closet doorway, clutching the envelope with my mother's letter like it was a lifeline. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I expected Gary to burst through the basement door, or Aunt Linda, or both of them together, ready to drag me back into whatever nightmare they'd built 20 years ago. But no one came down. The footsteps stopped right at the top of the stairs. The house went silent again. The kind of silence that feels planned. I didn't have time to panic. I shoved the files and photos back into the box, tucked my mother's letter into my pocket, and crawled deeper into the closet. I didn't close the door all the way, just enough to keep a sliver of the basement visible. And then the door at the top of the stairs opened with a soft, slow groan. A figure stepped inside. Aunt Linda, not Gary. She descended the stairs carefully, holding the railing with both hands. She looked older than she had that morning, older than she had last night. Like the weight she'd been carrying for 2 decades finally crushed her spine. At the bottom, she turned and looked directly at the closet where I was hiding. I know you're there, she said quietly. Come out. I stepped into the basement light, box still beside me on the floor. Her eyes flicked to it, then to me. She didn't look surprised. She sank onto the edge of the ping-pong table, hands trembling in her lap. "I knew you'd find it eventually," she said. "I told Gary we should have burned everything, but he insisted we keep the records in case we needed them." "In case you needed them to do what?" I demanded. "Gaslight me, blame me, cover up what actually happened." She didn't answer right away. Her chin trembled. She looked not guilty, not remorseful, resigned. "Emily," she whispered, "you weren't supposed to remember any of it." I stared at her. "Remember what? The truth?" She sighed, shoulders falling in a defeated slump. "You were 6, and you were curious. You followed Gary when he went outside that night. You saw him fighting with that woman, the one from the photos. She wasn't supposed to be there. They were arguing about money, about telling someone something she shouldn't have." I swallowed, hard. "He was going to hurt her." Linda squeezed her eyes shut. "He already had." My stomach twisted. "You screamed," she continued. "You tried to run. Gary grabbed you, hard. He dragged you inside while the woman ran. You kicked him, you bit him, you were terrified." "Because he hurt me," I snapped. She shook her head slowly. "No. That's not the part I'm talking about." A cold, sick feeling spread through me. "What part?" I whispered. She looked right at me, and the expression on her face, the mix of fear and dread, was one I'd never seen before. "It wasn't the screaming," she said. "It wasn't you fighting him, it was what you said." My throat tightened. "What did I say?" Her voice broke. "You told me you were going to tell the police. You told me you saw everything. You told me he hit her, and you knew he would lie about it, and you said you would make sure he went to jail." My pulse thudded in my ears. "You were a child," she said softly. "You shouldn't have understood what you saw, but you did. And that terrified Gary." She stared at the floor. "And that's why he came for you." My breath caught. "He dragged you to the basement," she whispered. "He said he needed to scare the truth out of you. He told me to hold you still. I refused at first. I tried to pull you away, but he was so angry. I'd never seen him like that." I felt bile rise in my throat. "You helped him." She nodded once. A tiny, broken movement. "Afterward," she said, voice cracking, "you wouldn't stop crying, you couldn't breathe. You told the officer who showed up the next morning that you fell. But then later, you started telling me you remembered more. That you knew what Gary did. That you were going to tell someone again." My heart dropped. "And that," she whispered, "was the moment we knew we had to send you away." My blood ran cold. "Why?" I whispered. "Why protect him?" She lifted her head slowly. And when she looked at me, her eyes were hollow. "Because Gary didn't just hurt that woman," she said. "He killed her." The world tilted. "And I helped bury her in the woods," Aunt Linda whispered. "Right behind this house." My knees nearly buckled. She wasn't scared of Gary finishing something. She was scared of me remembering enough to destroy them both. And now I finally understood. Everything they did to me, every lie, every manipulation, every erasure, was for one reason: to keep a murderer safe. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at her, feeling everything inside me go quiet. Not numb, sharp, focused, like something in me finally snapped into alignment. Aunt Linda sat hunched on the edge of the table, waiting for me to fall apart, cry, scream, anything. But all I felt was a cold, steady clarity. "Where is she?" I asked, her breath caught. "Emily, the woman Gary killed." "Where did you bury her?" Linda shook her head, wringing her hands. "You don't understand what you're asking. If this gets out—" "It will," I said. "That's the point." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Footsteps creaked upstairs again, Gary's heavy steps. Pacing, waiting, checking, I didn't have much time. I grabbed the box and tucked it under my arm, then pulled out my phone. Still no bars. But I didn't need service for what I was about to do. I switched to record video and pointed it at my aunt. She froze. "Emily, no." "Tell the truth," I said. "All of it, or I swear I will walk upstairs and do it in front of him." Her face drained of color. "Em, he'll kill you." "Then you better start talking fast." Her hands shook violently. Then slowly she nodded. Quiet tears fell down her cheeks as she spoke into the camera, voice trembling but unmistakably clear. She confessed to the affair Gary had with the woman, to the fight, to the violence, to dragging my 6-year-old body into the basement because Gary was scared I'd talk, to helping him bury the woman in the woods behind the swing set, to lying to police, to sending me away because they feared I'd remember, to planning 20 years later what they'd do if I came back asking questions. She spoke for almost 5 minutes. When she finished, I stopped recording and slipped the phone into my pocket. "Emily," she whispered, "I know you hate me. I deserve it, but please, please don't let him know I talked. He'll kill me too. I stared at her. This woman held me down while her husband terrorized me. She lied to doctors, lied to social workers, erased me from my own family history. But she wasn't the monster, not fully, just the coward who helped one. Stay down here, I said. Don't move. She nodded, sobbing. I took the box and climbed the stairs. At the top, the hallway stretched out in front of me. The murmurs had stopped. The house was too quiet. I walked forward, heart hammering but my hands steady. Gary stepped out of the living room the moment he heard me. His smile was gone now, replaced with suspicion. "Where's Linda?" he asked. "In the basement," I said. "She's tired." He didn't like that answer. His eyes narrowed. "You've been snooping again." I didn't respond. I just kept walking until I stood 5 feet from him, close enough to see the twitch in his jaw. "What did she tell you?" he demanded. "Everything." His whole body tensed. "You're lying." I pulled out my phone, opened the video, and hit play. Linda's voice filled the hallway. Gary lunged. I was ready. I threw the box straight at his face. Papers exploded everywhere, photos, reports, the envelope, like a storm of evidence raining down on him. He stumbled, grabbing at them desperately, panicking as his own crimes scattered around his feet. While he was flailing, I sprinted to the front door. This time, the chain lock wasn't on. I yanked the door open and bolted across the yard, straight toward the tree line. My phone finally found a signal halfway to the woods. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. I dialed 911 as I ran. "State your emergency," the operator answered. "My uncle murdered someone," I gasped. "Her body is buried behind 144 Ridgeview Drive, and I have a recorded confession from his wife." Silence, then rapid instructions, the clicking of keyboards, a sudden seriousness in the operator's voice. Within minutes, I heard sirens. I stopped at the edge of the woods, watching as police cruisers swarmed the house. Officers pulled Gary face down into the dirt while he screamed at Linda, accusing her of betraying him. She stood on the porch shaking, hands up, ready to be arrested. I should have felt something for her. I didn't. Hours later, after statements and evidence collection and a lengthy talk with detectives, I finally walked down the yard alone, past the swing set, toward the trees. I stood in the exact spot where they buried that woman 20 years ago and let myself breathe for the first time in 2 decades. They tried to erase me. They tried to rewrite me. They tried to bury the truth. But I dug it up. And now it's theirs to carry, not mine. Before I left, I whispered into the cold Pennsylvania air, "Finish what you started." I just did.